The Arizona desert burned beneath the bleeding sky of dusk, a stretch of orange fire melting into purple haze. Sheriff Colton Hayes stood still as stone, revolver raised, boots sinking slightly into the sand. Heat shimmered off the canyon walls behind him. The smell of dust and gunpowder clung to the air. Across from him stood Alara, a lone Apache widow. She trembled but didn't retreat. Her shawl, once white, was torn and gray with soot. The silence between them was heavy, like the weight of the dying sun pressing down on both their hearts. Colton's jaw tightened as he watched her. "You sheltered outlaws," he said, voice sharp and low, every syllable slicing through the wind. Alara lifted her chin slightly, eyes red from crying but still proud. "They were my people," she whispered. "I only wanted to save them." He had heard every excuse in the frontier. Thieves, rebels, and liars all spoke of loyalty, but something in her tone felt different. For a heartbeat, the wind stopped. Even the sand seemed to wait. Her voice shook, yet her gaze was steady, fierce beneath the fading light. Colton's finger hovered near the trigger, and time itself slowed. Then she broke, not in fear, but in surrender. "Stop," she cried, her voice echoing through the canyon. "Please, I'll be your obedient wife. Just don't kill me." The words cracked like dry earth, splitting after rain. Colton froze. He'd faced men with knives, outlaws who begged for mercy, but never a woman who offered her life in a single promise. His revolver trembled. Her tears fell one by one, tracing the line of her jaw like raindrops over stone. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered the gun. The echo of metal easing back into its holster sounded louder than thunder. And in that instant, something unseen formed between them. Not mercy, not affection, but a fragile thread of humanity stretched thin by desperation. The desert exhaled. A breeze moved again, brushing her hair across her face. She stayed frozen, unsure if she was truly safe. Colton turned slightly, glancing toward the horizon where shadows crawled up the mesas. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "Get your things," he said quietly. "You'll ride with me." Alara's lips parted, confusion and relief colliding. "Where?" she asked. "Somewhere alive," he muttered, mounting his horse. She hesitated before following. The journey was silent, except for hooves crunching against gravel. The land around them was a sea of emptiness, dry riverbeds, cacti, and the whisper of coyotes in the distance. Colton rode ahead, never looking back, yet somehow aware of her every movement. Alara kept her distance, afraid that a single word might change his mind. The moon rose pale and watchful above them, and the desert night turned cold. When they reached a small wooden cabin at the edge of the valley, he dismounted first. "This is my place," Colton said, tying his horse to the post. "Ain't much, but it's safe." She stood there, unsure whether to enter. "Safe from whom?" she asked quietly. "From everyone," he replied. Inside, the cabin smelled of old wood, tobacco, and the faint scent of loneliness. A single lamp burned on the table. He gestured toward a chair. "Sit. You look half dead." She obeyed, wrapping her arms around herself as the silence filled the room like smoke. Colton poured water into a tin cup and handed it to her. She drank slowly, her throat burning from dryness. "You really meant what you said?" he asked finally. "About being my wife?" Alara looked down. "I said it to live," she answered softly. "But I will keep my word." Her honesty struck him harder than any bullet. He leaned against the wall, studying her. She wasn't weak. She was surviving in the only way she could. The following days passed in uneasy rhythm. Alara cooked what little food they had, swept the floor, mended torn curtains. Colton spent long hours outside, fixing fences, tending the horse, sometimes staring out at the horizon as if waiting for something or someone to appear. Neither spoke much. Yet in the quiet, a fragile trust began to grow. She noticed how he left an extra blanket near her bed when nights grew cold. He noticed how her song hummed softly at dawn, a haunting tune that eased the morning silence. One evening, Rain clouds gathered, rare and heavy over the desert. Alara stood by the window, watching lightning split the sky. I haven't seen rain in months, she whispered. Colton, sitting near the fire, looked up. It don't visit often, he said. Like peace. The thunder rolled. She turned toward him. Do you ever find peace, Sheriff? He shook his head. Not since the war. Not since I learned how easy it is to pull a trigger and how hard it is to forget it. His words lingered like smoke. The rain began to fall, soft at first, then fierce, drumming against the roof. Alara sat across from him, her shawl damp with humidity. You killed my people, she said quietly, not accusing, just stating truth. Colton didn't flinch. I killed orders, he replied. Didn't see faces, just targets. Her eyes glistened. Then why spare me? He looked into the fire. Because I finally saw a face. The answer hung between them, raw and real. That night, lightning flashed through the window, illuminating their shadows on the cabin wall. Alara hummed the song again, low and mournful. Colton closed his eyes. The sound of her voice wrapped around him like the rain, gentle, steady, forgiving. He realized how long it had been since he'd felt something other than regret. When the storm quieted, he stood and approached her. You should rest, he said softly. She nodded, though neither moved away. For the first time, their silence wasn't heavy, it was tender. Days turned into weeks. The desert began to bloom again after the rain, small green shoots breaking through red sand. Alara laughed once, a short, surprised sound when a lizard darted across her foot. Colton smiled without meaning to. The air between them warmed with something unspoken. Yet both knew peace and the frontier never lasted long. Riders were coming. He'd seen dust trails on the horizon that morning. Old lawmen, maybe bounty hunters. The past, as always, was catching up. That evening, he cleaned his revolver by lamplight. Alara watched from the corner, fear flickering in her eyes. They're coming for you? She asked. He nodded. Maybe for both of us. She stood, stepping closer. Then we run. He shook his head. Running never worked. Not for me. Not for you. The tension grew thick as the smell of oil and iron filled the air. Finally, he placed the gun on the table and looked at her. But I won't let them hurt you. Not again. Alara's hands trembled, but she met his gaze. You already saved me once, she said. Now let me save you. He frowned. Ow. She stepped forward, took his hand, and pressed it to her heart. By not being alone anymore. The sheriff's breath caught. In that single moment, the ghosts of his past, the gunfights, the screams, the empty nights seemed to fade. The fire crackled softly, and he realized the storm outside had stopped. The desert was quiet again, waiting. When dawn came, light spilled through the cabin window. Colton stood at the door, watching the horizon glow gold. The danger would come, but so would the new day. Behind him, Alara moved about quietly, making coffee in a battered tin pot. The smell of it filled the small room. He turned, and for the first time, his face softened. Alara, he said, voice rough, you still want to be my wife? She smiled faintly. I already am, just not the way I thought. The camera of memory would pull back here, the two of them framed against the vast emptiness, two lost souls who had somehow found each other in the ashes of war and wilderness. The gun rested cold on the table and used a silent witness to everything that had been destroyed and everything just beginning. The desert wind swept through the open door, carrying away the last of the fear. And in that quiet, the sheriff and the widow stood together as the first light of morning touched their faces. No longer enemies, no longer strangers. Just survivors who had learned that not every war ends with a bullet. Some end when two broken hearts finally stop fighting. Would you like me to craft part 2? Another 1,500 words, as the continuation, where Colton's past returns and both must face a final choice between freedom and love. 2 weeks later, Alara lived quietly in Colton's lonely cabin by the red cliffs. The wind sang through the canyons like a mournful ghost, and every morning began with the smell of strong coffee and silence. She cooked, cleaned, and moved like a shadow through the small wooden house. Her grief had folded itself into her hands, into every task she